You're invited to the ultimate celebration of horror. It's a killer Halloween party hosted by Angela, the reigning queen of Scream.
Oh man, my nipples hurt.
Really? That's how you want to open this episode, with my nipples hurt? Hi guys! It seems like it's been a while since you've heard from us.
Because it has been.
Well, it has been, and the truth is, October is a super busy month for me and my co-host. It's been kind of hard to find time to record. However, we're not going to let you down. We're going to get out a second episode this month. What did we do last October, when it was around this special time of year for us horror fans?
Went to a horror convention?
We did that, and then we talked about the horror franchise most obviously associated with the holiday.
Oh yeah, the Halloween episode.
When it comes to other horror films based around Halloween, it's not a super long list. However, there is one more series. All the films are set on October 31st, and it just so happens to be a favorite of JD and I's. What is that series?
Night of the Demons.
Not to be confused with
Night of the Demon.
Night of the Demon, the Bigfoot movie, or Curse of the Demon, alternatively known as Night of the Demon, the film from the 50s.
Or Demons.
Not to be confused with any of those. This is that other 80s horror franchise with a killer named Angela. Though honestly, only one of these movies was actually made in the 80s, but whatever.
Yeah, actually, only one was.
And before we get started on the episode, as always, I want to thank all our listeners. Whit has been leaving lots and lots of feedback on my blog during my Halloween Horror Fest blogathon. Thank you so much. Lloyd has left some things on the Facebook group. Thank you so much. The support is always greatly appreciated. And we apologize for this episode being so late.
Amen, sister.
Speaking of sisters, let's get rolling. Are you ready to eat a bowl of fuck, JD?
I'm ready to eat a bowl of fuck.
A full moon. A spooky, deserted mansion. Halloween night.
Let's party!
All they want to do is raise a little hell. Now, as long as they live, they'll wonder what's gotten into them. Night of the Demons. Party till you drop.
How did you become a part of Angela's cult, JD? When were you first exposed to the Night of the Demon franchise?
It was actually Night of the Demons 2 that I saw first.
That was your gateway film into the series?
Yes.
It doesn't surprise me, because that's the one you're always talking about.
When Cinemax, every Wednesday night, they showed a horror movie.
I think a lot of people saw these movies for the first time on cable. That was a way to see horror movies back in the early 90s. Either video stores or cable, and when you weren't old enough to rent R-rated movies from the video stores, you saw them on cable.
That led me to go rent the first one.
This is gonna make me sound like a dork. I think the first time I saw the original Night of the Demons was on YouTube.
Nerd!
It was on YouTube or Vio. It was some video website. I had heard you talk about it, but I'd never really been interested in seeking it out until
I mean, this is one of my top tier horror franchises.
It's not a super well-known series. Angela is not as iconic.
She's a great, for lack of a better term, slasher.
These movies really aren't slasher films, though. They have elements, but they're not full-blown slashers.
Yeah, they're not. They've still got the cheesy one-liners, great gore. It is more of a demonic possession movie.
It is. I feel like it's comparable to Evil Dead in the way it combines different horror tropes into something sort of new.
Kind of like its own thing.
Getting to this first movie from 1988, directed by Kevin S. Heaney, who also made Witchboard, which is a movie I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, that's a movie you're a big fan of.
Man, I don't know why you don't like Witchboard. What's the premise of Night of the Demons? Really the entire franchise, but this first movie specifically.
A bunch of high school kids want to find a rad place to party on Halloween night.
A rad place.
So they decide to hit up this old abandoned funeral parlor called Hall House.
Hall House, yes.
Not to be confused with Hell House.
Not to be confused with Hell House or Hill House from The Haunting.
Do you think that was intentional? What other vowel hasn't been used?
apparently there's a real haunted house that's known as Hull House. I don't know if it was an intentional reference or not.
I don't know.
But when I first saw it, I thought this is a reference to Hill House and Hell House.
I mean, that's what I thought.
They go to the party at this abandoned funeral home, which has a history of supernatural events.
They do what every person shouldn't do in a horror movie. They invoke the spirits.
They unintentionally summon the demon.
Leanna quickly sticks a lipstick in her nipple.
Then shit goes crazy. People start getting possessed and crazy shit happens.
Mimi Kincaid does a satanic dance, which she does in every movie.
Yeah, there is a dance scene in every movie. One of the things I find especially clever about this film is that it combines a number of different horror subgenres. It has the horny teens in an isolated area getting picked off one by one, which is very much the slasher thing. Mm-hmm. The whole film is set in essentially a haunted house, kind of a haunted house story. But the central gimmick is demonic possession. And the way the possession spreads is through contact, through sex or blood.
Biting.
Similar to a zombie movie in that way.
If you die in this house, you become a demon.
Yeah, teens die and they rise again as a demon.
One of my favorite scenes in this movie, where they're actually having sex in the coffin.
Oh, yeah.
They start slamming the naked Chinese chick. Walking around, missing an arm. Great monster designs in this movie.
It's very simplistic. Some appliances, yellow contact lenses, and some teeth.
But it's very effective.
Yeah, it works. And another thing that's good about the film is it builds up a surprisingly complex mythology. And this is something Kevin Tini is good at. He does the same thing really well in Witchboard. They talk about how a coroner who was living there with his family went crazy and killed his family. And the Indians before then considered this land cursed. My favorite aspect is the underground stream. That's why the demons can't leave the house.
You gotta have something in there to stop them from wreaking havoc.
It's a recurring trope that monsters can't cross running water. Underground stream that surrounds the house and locks them in is a clever aspect. Feels like a real local legend. And Hull House is a great location.
Right.
You mentioned the gore. This is an exploitation film. Got the gore, it's got the TNA.
Yes.
It doesn't skimp on either. You mentioned the couple getting smashed in the casket, which is a great gag. It speaks to the kind of characters in this film that they would think having sex in a casket would be a good idea to begin with.
You know what's always got me as a kid?
What?
And I've already mentioned it.
Okay.
But actually, when I first saw this movie, it really did blow my mind. And I'll admit it now, but when Leanna quickly takes that lipstick and shoves it into her nipple,
And then pulls it out the other breast.
my head practically exploded.
You have talked about the scene over and over again.
You're like 10 or 12 years old, and you see this movie for the first time. But at 10 and 12, I was no amateur when it comes to horror movies, but that was the first time I had ever seen that.
Clearly made an impact on you. A really weird, twisted thing. Who would think to do that? After that scene where she is seducing, well, not really seducing one guy, but they're about to become intimate. In fact, Leanna Quigley shows some frontal nudity there. She's on top of him, and she gouges his eyes out.
Oh, yeah.
Great eye gouge. There's certainly no lack of sex and nudity in this movie. One of the first things in the film is Leanna Quigley bending over in her little Bo Peep outfit and showing her ass to everybody in the convenience store so Angela can steal some booze.
Some other cool things, too. The guy with the pig nose. When he becomes demonified, the nose
Stooge
fuses to his face.
Yeah. Stooge
actually becomes part of him.
Stooge is that character, and he's the big, boisterous, obnoxious asshole. And he's the one who says, eat a bowl of fuck.
The thing about this movie is there's not one character that completely unbearably unlikable.
I agree. I think the real reason this movie has such a following is because the characters are really memorable.
Each character stands out in their own way.
Exactly. Angela is not your typical horror villain. She's female, which is still kind of a rarity. Mm-hmm. We didn't mention the Bauhaus scenes, Stigmata Martyr, where she does the...
Stigmata!
An inspired musical choice. And I don't know if any of our listeners are fans of the Bauhaus. That's probably their most satanic-sounding song, and it certainly fits the scene. Good example how the movie mixes together the sex and the horror. Mimi and Kate is certainly very nice to look at. Spinning around and her skirt's flying up, and you're seeing her garters and everything.
The movie scares you with interpretive dance.
Angela is a fun character. Kind of like if Lydia from Beetlejuice went over to the dark side.
Right. This movie is legitimately creepy.
It does have some creepy stuff like the weird demon in the basement.
Yeah.
Bone demon.
I just consider him to be Satan.
And in this first movie, he's the primary villain. In the sequels, Angela would become the villain. But in this one, this mysterious demonic entity is the primary motivating evil behind the film. Getting back to the characters, the final girl in this film is named Helen. And perhaps not too subtly, she wears an Alice in Wonderland getup. That's her Halloween costume. She's an innocent lost in a very dark world here in this film. The character who is her boyfriend, Jay, begins the film seeming like the typical heroic nice guy, but he's not. He's a sleazebag. He tries to put the moves on her, and she's not comfortable with it. When she doesn't put out, he goes over to Leanna Quigley's character, and then she kills him. The guy that seems like the creep, guy named Sal, who shows up at her door, he turns out to be the hero. Does that switcheroo, and that's fun. And then also this movie notably has a black guy that makes it to the end.
Right.
Roger. There are other characters who aren't as distinct. You mentioned the hot Asian chick, and she has a boyfriend.
Roger is also Asian, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the one dressed as a doctor, right?
Right.
Roger Roger has a girlfriend who gets killed. He's waiting in the car, and her dead body lands on the roof. The cast is one of the things that elevates this movie above your typical 80s creature feature. Would you call this a full-blown horror comedy?
This movie, no.
It does have the strain of humor. That opening and ending scene, which have nothing to do with the rest of the movie, but I love them. The old man on the street with the apples. This guy clearly hates kids. He clearly hates Halloween. He has all these apples. These are intrinsic.
Yes, because he puts the razor blades in the apples.
Yes.
The next morning, he's eating apple pie that his wife had made, and he goes, "Oh, these are really good. Where'd you get the apples? From your leftover trick-or-treat apples."
At which point, his throat burst open.
Yes.
And he dies horribly, and then the wife says, "Happy Halloween." So the scene has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It's completely unrelated. What a great moment. And the movie looks good. There's some good direction, some good POV shots, which I think are almost certainly Evil Dead inspired. There's that really cool scene where Helen falls from the window and it's like tracks her as she falls to the ground. Kevin Tini, he's a talented filmmaker. The movie has a great soundtrack too.
Yeah.
Good stuff. It does have a strong cult following. It's not one of the big franchises, but horror fans know this movie. I don't know if people outside of the fandom know this one.
If you haven't seen it, we highly recommend it.
This is solid 80s creature stuff.
Angela is inviting you back to Hull House
Angela, your party guests are here.
to celebrate her homecoming party and raise a little hell.
Oh, don't be silly. It's devil's food.
The sequel did not come out until 1994. Seems like it should have been sooner.
Yeah.
Because it feels earlier than that. It feels like an 80s movie.
Yeah, I was thinking like 92.
I think the reason the sequel got made, this movie came out during the horror VHS boom of the early 90s. There was this huge video market. There was a video store on every street corner. Horror movies were a big market. I think Night of the Demons, I'm sure was successful theatrically, really found its audience on video. I think it was rented so much that they said, well, we gotta make a sequel to this thing. And they did. Is it fair to say this is your favorite of the series?
Yeah, and I'm not even ashamed about it. It had me at Ninja Nun. It had me at Nunja.
I don't know if I would put this one better than the first one, but it's at least of the same quality.
I will say the first one is a better film, but my favorite of the series, it's this one.
Super entertaining.
Spare the rod, spoil the child. Oh god, the one-liners in this movie.
The plot behind Night of the Demons 2 is the events of Halloween 1988 that we saw in the first film have become...
It's Devil's... I'm sorry, go on. It's just going to be me quoting this movie.
The events of the previous movie have passed into local legend. The film takes place at St. Rita's Academy, which is this local Catholic private school for troubled teens. One of the students there is this quirky, small, nervous, shy girl named Mouse, who is...
Angela's sister,
and quite haunted by her sister. We find out that after the events of the first film, her parents committed suicide, and Mouse has visions of Angela traumatized by this. Most of the students at St. Rita's are not worried about demons, save for this one guy named Harry, fancies himself an exorcist and a demonologist. Most of the kids at the school are preoccupied with getting laid, especially Cheryl, who's the bad girl in this one.
She's so hot.
The one that motivates the plot in a lot of ways. She wrestles with one of the dudes on the tennis court, and this pisses off the nun who bans her from the Halloween dance. And first off, it seems weird that a Catholic academy would have a Halloween dance, but this is a very progressive Catholic school.
Right.
When she gets banned from the Halloween party, she decides to throw her own party at Hull House, where the same shit happens again. This one really does refocus on Angela as the villain. She's the main antagonist, and it really does try to turn her into the next Freddy or Jason.
Definitely.
She is cracking the one-liners.
Got some good ones. She says it so innocently, too. It's devil's food.
I don't know if they're Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, some sort of door-to-door religious salesmen come to Hull House. Which, first off, why would they do that?
Exactly. Why was Angela the only demon to make it?
She's the coolest one, that's why.
Oh, yeah.
Mimi Kincaid, though great in the first one, really comes into her own here.
Oh, yeah.
She just steals the show.
Yes.
Has more of a slasher-esque elements to it than the first one.
She's hotter in this one.
Yeah.
Because the hairstyle in the first one wasn't really doing it for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, the movie still manages to terrify you with interpretive dance.
She does. Angela does a sexy dance in every movie. It's a trademark. Continues the tradition of the first movie having a very memorable cast of characters. People who say that 80s horror is better than any type of horror would probably point people in this one are a little better looking. It's not as gritty in its presentation, but whatever. That's not really that important to me. The final girl in this one, BB, seems very virginal. That doesn't last. Her and her boyfriend come very, very close to consummating their relationship. Really like Mouse.
Mouse is adorable.
She is adorable.
And you get like a Lori Petty vibe from her.
Lori Petty, really. I was thinking Carrie almost. She's want to hug her. She's such a innocent. Merle Kennedy is the actress playing Mouse, so she's very good. Harry is the name of the guy who is the would-be demonologist, as his interest in demons makes him a social pariah. To the point where even Father Bob says, man, you've got to lay off of that.
Doesn't the priest actually look at him and pretty much say, dude, you need to go get laid?
Father Bob is a great character. He is the opposite of your traditional Catholic priest. He's very laid back. In fact, he seems very agnostic in his beliefs. He doesn't believe in demons at all. Cheryl is played by Zoe Trilling, and in my notes I describe her as voluptuous.
Voluptuous.
Quite lovely.
Even when her boobs turn into hands?
Whatever, you gotta roll with the punches. Rick and Terry are two other characters, and these aren't complex characters. They're basically horny guy and comic relief girl, but I like them anyway. The cast in this is very memorable. The characters are not just generic slasher fodder. You have interest in them. I like Father Bob, and then yes, the Ninja Nun, Sister Gloria, best character in the movie.
Definitely.
Awesome.
And she's played by Rams from Charmed.
Didn't know that.
She was also the mom in Heathers. She was...
Really?
Yeah.
Did you IMBD this morning?
No, I just knew it.
Huh. She's the mom from Heathers. I didn't make that connection. She's introduced. She's in her room, and she's got a ruler, and she's pantomiming swordplay with it. Really is your typical hard-nosed nun. She goes commando at the end of the movie.
Doesn't she get, like, confiscated condoms and fill them with
she
fills
condoms full of holy water. They have the super soakers full of holy water. She's the most badass nun ever put into a film. Swinging the rosary beads around like a nunchuck.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
She's awesome. I feel like there was a cut of the film where she gets killed off at the end, because Angela seemingly decapitates her. Mm-hmm. Then we discover, no, she didn't decapitate her. She just snuck her head down out of her habit. They just couldn't kill this character off. She was just too awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe is a little more fun than the first one. The first one's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I feel like this one plays with the premise a little more.
Yeah.
It allows Angela to leave Hull House. It gives her a loophole. She sneaks into the one girl's lipstick container. Mm-hmm. There's another lipstick gag in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
A naughty tentacle comes out, and that's how Cheryl becomes possessed.
Yes.
This allows Angela to crash the Halloween party on the campus, which she proceeds to do. That's where Mimi Kincaid's contractually obligated sexy dance happens. You mentioned the scene where Cheryl's boobs come to life.
Yep.
Instead of the guy grabbing the boobs grab him. Prankster character becomes possessed when Angela makes out with his tonsils. His boner seems to have a mind of its own.
There's the scene where the guy's playing basketball with his own head.
Yes, that's awesome. There's so much fun to be had in this film. This movie really does take the premise of the first one and expand upon it in a way that does more stuff with it. I do love the ending where Angela turns into a giant snake woman. That puts a strong punctuation mark on the end of this movie, where Angela turns into this Lamia-like creature and blows up when the sunlight hits. Actually, the sunlight in the shape of a cross is what does it, right?
Yes, I believe that is what it is.
Yeah, and possible Brides of Dracula reference. Good stuff all around in this movie. It's not perfect. There's some stock footage from the first one. Brian Trenchard Smith was the name of the guy who directed this, and he's an Australian filmmaker, made Leprechaun 3 and Leprechaun 4, a bunch of other stuff. And his direction is not as expressive as Kevin Teeney's.
The guy also gave his Leprechaun in Space, so...
I'm not saying Brian Trenchard is a bad filmmaker. I would put it on equal footing with the first one. It's one of those rare horror sequels that is at least as good as the original, possibly better.
Possibly.
It is certainly a blast to watch.
Not a better film, possibly more entertaining.
Yeah.
Guns are so sexy. Don't you think so? Of course, Vince has a much bigger one. But then again, size isn't really that important as long as you know how to use it. Do you know how to use it?
Like, there's a significant break between each one of these movies. And by 97, this is post-Scream, the horror genre is really different. It seems like A Night of the Demons 3 should have happened way sooner than that.
Right.
Maybe that is the reason why Part 3 is definitely the least
Nothing
serious.
against Mimi Kincaid, but she is significantly difference in age in this film.
Not so much age, her performance seems much less interested. She's definitely not as committed to the material.
She might have had a kid or something in between. I just watched the movie this morning.
Kevin Teeney, the original director, wrote this one, which is weird because you'd think that would mean it would be good, but Part 3 is pretty weak.
Well, maybe it's not the writing that's wrong with it.
You remember those awful opening credits with CGI mannequins flying through the
Yeah.
air? And it goes on forever. What was up with that?
I don't know.
The first two Night of the Demons have comedic elements, and this one does away with a lot of the humor, I think. This is a dark and gritty Night of the Demons movie. These kids, they're driving around in their van on Halloween night looking to get into trouble, which they proceed to do. They go to a liquor store, guns are pulled, cops are shot. These kids are on the run, and they decide, where do we have to hide? Oh, let's hide at Hull House, where Angela's waiting. The teens in this one are largely unpleasant. Really don't like any of the characters in this one.
No, not a one.
Vince is the leader of the group, and he's a total asswipe. Aggressively not likable.
To me, it's almost like they tried to put characters from the first and second film into one film. Vince, very reminiscent of the guy with the disembodied penis from the second movie. The cheerleader is very reminiscent of the Alice in Wonderland.
Vince's girlfriend, Lois, is this budding sadist. She seems physically aroused by violence.
She's the only character that doesn't seem like she's come from any of the previous films.
Or Orson is the name of this character, who is desperate for the approval of his asshole friends. You mentioned Nick, and he's a really nice guy. Why is he hanging out with these douchebags?
None of them seem like they go together.
The characters in this one are a big problem. That was a positive aspect of the last two films. This one is sexier than the already pretty sexy previous entries. A lot more sleaziness in this one.
Yeah.
A lot of lack of creativity. The girl who's dressed up in a cat suit for Halloween.
And she becomes a cat demon.
She becomes a cat. The girlfriend who has a snake hand puppet on. Her hand becomes a snake. A lot of stuff like that.
You can never tell who the hero in the film is supposed to be. It doesn't become very obvious until the very end.
Even the kills in this movie are not that good. Angela's making out with one of the guys. Pretty intense kissing, and then her tongue shoots out through the back of his skull. And I looked it up, and this movie came out after Species. I can't help but feel like somebody else did it first.
I do like the cop badge kill. That was pretty cool.
There is some really noticeable CGI in this movie.
That's a problem. Angela has all these telekinetic powers out of nowhere.
Her abilities are not well defined in this one. And there's a lot of stock footage in this one from the first two movies, which is really noticeable because Hull House looks nothing like the house from the previous film. In the sequel, you could tell it was a different house than the one in the first one, but they tried to make them look the same. But this one, they didn't even try. Hull House looks completely different. The set is totally different. Even the fence around the house is totally different. And even the makeup in this one is not that good. This doesn't have the same spark to it. This one is definitely a step down. There's only two things I find interesting at all about the film. The scene where Angela performs fellatio on a gun and sucks the bullets out. I like that. And then the movie finally shows what happens to a demon when it tries to cross the stream. They essentially melt. Night of the Demons 3, it's never been released on DVD. The only copies you can find are these crappy VHS scans on the internet. But it even ends with that really lame scene where the two survivors say, well, every year we'll have to come back, as if almost setting up future sequels that were not to be. This is probably the low point of the franchise.
Probably the lowest point of the franchise.
I just wish all three could have been good. Alas...
Did you see those things? What the fuck was that?
Those things are demons.
I think the thing wanted to fuck me.
Ew.
No costume, no candy, motherfucker!
There was not any news at all on the Night of the Demons front for many years. Out of nowhere, in 2009, a remake was announced. When you first heard they were remaking Night of the Demons, how'd you feel about that?
I had mixed feelings. I guess the best way to say it was cautiously excited.
I guess it's been 20 years since the first one, but not enough time had passed for a remake. What was the appeal of remaking Night of the Demons? Because it's not like this movie has a lot of mainstream recognition. Why couldn't they just made another movie? And the plot is very different in this. It is a remake. It follows the same general outline. Angela brings some friends to a haunted house. They get possessed by demons. All the other stuff is different. I'm personally not a fan of this movie.
And Shannon Elizabeth is a piss poor Angela.
It's definitely a step down. The original film's plot was very elegant. Teens have a party, haunted house, get possessed, shit happens. And this one adds a bunch of extra crap that is really not necessary.
They're not actually demons or ghosts.
First off, they moved the location to New Orleans, which is just the second most overused setting for a horror movie ever. None of the characters are teenagers anymore. Angela is now a party promoter. She's a professional party planner. She throws this big Halloween party, and it's not Hull House anymore. It's Brosette's house. She throws a crazy Halloween party. The cops show up, bust it, and then just her and a couple of friends get left at the house. They find some ancient skeletons in the basement. One of the guys gets bitten by the skeleton. Was any of that shit necessary? Was it necessary to change the premise so much? Are we too sophisticated for teens throw party and haunted house get killed anymore? This movie was directed by this husband and wife team of filmmakers who've made a lot of other horror movies. Autopsy was one. They've made a lot of stuff for the After Dark Horror Fest, and all those movies are terrible. There's not a good one in any of those. They all have a very similar, generic, turn of the millennium mall horror style, and this movie has that too. Really not that interesting to look at. Characters are all 20-somethings played by very glamorous actors. And also Edward Furlong. The goth rock style of the original has been traded for flashy debauchery, is what I would call it. Everybody swears a lot, to the point where it becomes annoying. It's like, we get it, you're edgy. And then the demons do that annoying Jacob's Ladder, great movie. But I blame it. It is so responsible for that stupid cliche of the twitchy head thing. I hate the twitchy head thing. Horror movies, stop doing that. It's not scary. There is humor in this film, but I don't really think it's all that funny. It's very vulgar and smarmy and self-serving.
You know, Edward Furlong might listen to this podcast, Zach. So you might want to go a little easy on the guy.
If Edward Furlong is listening, I want to ask him what he was thinking when he went to that seafood restaurant and freed the lobsters, when he picked up the lobsters out of the tank and set them free. I really want to know what was going through your brain, Ed.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Cocaine, yeah, it's probably what was going through his brain. The mythology in the original, immediately understandable. And this one needlessly complicates it. It adds a whole bunch of extra shit to the mythology behind the movie. Demons were kicked out of hell for being too badass. And there's some loophole that allows them to possess people. And if they possess enough people, people. They can leave the mansion and take over the Earth and bring about hell on Earth. But even though they need their victims to be alive, they're still killing everybody. Magic words written on the walls that keep them out of one room in the house. A lot of this stuff is not explained elegantly. There's a lot of bold-faced exposition here. Monica Kena's character literally just reads a lot of this shit off the wall. That is bad screenwriting. Kids go to haunted house, party, get killed. Was that too fucking simple? The middle part of the movie becomes this cycle where the characters are locked in the room, the demons are outside the room mocking them, they leave for some reason, somebody gets killed, they rush back to the room, rinse, repeat.
That's a pretty bad scene in that movie too. I hate how they try to outdo the original. Like the lipstick gag.
Yara Bjard is the actress. She sticks her lipstick in her nipple, pulls it out of her other nipple, and then pulls it out of her vagina, right?
Eat it, and then pull it out one nipple, and stick it in another, and then pulls it out the vagina. I don't know.
There's this annoying tendency for the film to say, hey, we're referencing this thing you know, but we're doing it better. We're edgier. This is the 2009 version.
Something, though, that is a testament for the film.
What?
Even though it does use a good bit of CGI.
There is a lot of practical effects.
Most of the demon makeup is all practical.
Yeah, and I like the design for Angela. She has these big ram horns that curl around. That looks pretty cool. One of the girls gets her face ripped off, a bloody skeleton face. And the movie certainly doesn't back down on the TNA any. There's lots of female nudity, though whether or not the, shall we say, enhanced actresses in this one will appeal to you is a matter of taste.
I really like the green chick. I think that's that chick that's got a really hard name to say.
DRBR.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah, and then the tentacles come out of her nipples.
Yeah.
I didn't like the...
I mean, I didn't like the tentacle nipple part, but...
It has these flashbacks to the 20s that are done in a silent film style, which is kind of a neat idea. The soundtrack is pretty good in this, though it's missing the Bauhaus.
That's right.
It does not have the Bauhaus.
Does not have stigma.
Yeah, Angela does her sexy dance to a hypo-negative song in this one and then tears the girl's face off. The cast in this is not as interesting. Maddie is the final girl. That's Monica Kena of Freddy vs. Jason fame. This is how undefined the characters are. Her two friends both dress up as sexy cats for Halloween. They're undefined to the point where you can't tell which sexy cat is which. And I don't think that was a meta move on the writer's aspect. And then Edward Furlong has this very typical redemption arc. He's a drug dealer. Must not have been a hard part for him to play. Oh, snap! We got you, Edward Furlong! Shannon Elizabeth's Angela is just nothing on the original.
She just doesn't have the personality that Mimi Kincaid had.
She's generic sexy. She's a generic sexy villain.
The problem I have with her Angela, because they're trying to go grim, dark, and edgy, they completely missed the point of the Angela character. Mimi Kincaid had this innocence to her voice, like whimsy in her voice.
There was very much a sense of humor behind her motivation, which is completely gone in this version.
Right, it's just raw kill. And it's just...
It might sound like I hate this movie, and I don't hate it. I'm completely indifferent to it, though. It's very much a generic 2009 horror movie.
I didn't care for it, really. Still think I like it better than 3.
This franchise really peters off in the second half.
Where you going? The party's just begun.
Did you know that there was actually going to be a sequel to this remake?
Yes, it was on Kickstarter.
It did not even come remotely close to reaching its goal. Night of the Demons After Party. Didn't I email you the Kickstarter?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about doing it. But
yeah, I think they canceled it pretty quickly because it was apparent they were not going to reach their goal. I actually remembered it wrong. I remember this being a new sequel. I remembered it being a new sequel, not a sequel to the remake. And when I found that out, I was like, oh, well, I'm glad it didn't get made. However, there were some things that were interesting about this. Anthony Hickox of Waxwork, Hellraiser 3, Warlock 2 fame was going to direct this.
Oh, God, that would have been a good movie.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it would have been
well,
or not.
It would have been a good movie.
I don't know how good it would have been because
it would have been Batman and Robin good.
Anthony Hickox is a very uneven filmmaker, but he has made some films we enjoy. They could have gotten him back in the 80s to do a Night of the Demon sequel. That probably would have been awesome because I can see his style blending really, really well with this franchise. And it was going to star Tiffany Sheepus, who had a small role in the remake. She was a minor character, and apparently she was going to assume the role of the new Angela. You'd call her a Scream Queen, but she hasn't been in very many horror movies people have seen. She's been in a lot of low-budget stuff. She's a former Tromette, to give you an idea. A lot of the movies she's made are of the Troma level. The movie did not get funded on Kickstarter, and there has thus far been no further attempts to make it. I think, as of now, the Night of the Demons franchise is pretty much over. It is a recognizable name. It doesn't have a lot of recognition. There might be a new one at some point in time, but I think it's going to be a while.
I think we'll end up getting another remake.
Probably. There will probably be another remake in about 5 or 10 years, I think. Who knows, you know.
It needs to have a theatrical release.
It would be nice to get a new theatrical Night of the Demons.
And I think that's one of the problems why the remake wasn't as successful, is because they just did a direct-to-video.
And it came during a period in time where there was a lot of very undistinguished direct-to-video horror films.
Exactly.
Eat a bowl of fuck!
our standard in the every episode contact dump. I know regular listeners, of which we have several now, and again, big thanks you to these guys. I know you guys are sick of hearing this at the end of every episode, but it's for the benefit of first-time listeners. Our email is bangersinmash88@yahoo.com. That's the word bangers, that's a letter N, that's the word mash, that's the number 88@yahoo.com.
You can also hit us up on Facebook, the Bangers and Mash Show.
Yeah, just search us on Facebook. We have our followers on Facebook who like every post. Thank you so much. We got very great feedback on the convention report episode. Lots of people were equally excited about the Robert Englund soundbite.
As we still are.
Yeah, and it's still the
Are you
coolest.
going to open this episode with it?
No. I think every future Nerd Vomit episode will be opened with it, though.
You know it's going to be a fluff piece if you hear the Robert Englund.
If you press play and you hear Bob's voice, you know it's going to be a loose episode. My Halloween Horror Fest blogathon is still ongoing as of now. It'll probably be over by the time this episode goes up. www.zacksfilmthoughts.blogspot.com. I'll put a link in the description. And then follow us on Twitter. Follow me at LastMonsterKid, JD at MKFan88 if you feel the need to. You really don't have to. I'm always on Twitter and I never say anything of any value at all.
I'm never on Twitter.
That wraps it up. Hey man, I got this invite to this party tonight, this Halloween party. You think we should go to this? It says Freddie and Jason were too scared to come.
Those pussies. Why is this signed in lipstick?
I thought it was blood.
And look, there's a chick over there with a skull and a fork.
This has gotten shitty. Eat a bowl of fuck.
Let's go eat a bowl of fuck.